We are two women in academia,
raising questions and breaking down perceptions
from a Black point of view.
Welcome to the Black Gaze Podcast.
It's your girl, Dr. Porcher.
And it's your girl, Dr. Bertrand.
Friend, we back again.
It's another one.
It's another one. Listen, recorded 2 episodes back to back ain't for the faint of heart, honey. I'm old.
Listen, but you better get your energy together because we ain't as whack.
Okay, now calm on down.
Come on now.
Okay, we got folks here, so can you please act like it? Okay, all right.
I be feeding off your energy. You
All
don't
right,
know how
come
to
on. Okay, so, friend.
Yes.
Can you tell the people what we're talking about again today? But you got to say it like I would say it.
Then you say it if you want to say it like you want to say it. How you
introduce? Go.
But like, how somebody gonna tell somebody introduce, but you say it like I'ma say it? But whatever, I'ma say it like I'ma say it.
Okay. Say
All right.
It.
All right. Black lives don't matter if we all don't matter.
See, that's how I would say it.
I know who you are.
Okay.
And honestly, with that topic, we got a second half to that.
You know, colon.
A colon.
Yeah.
Insert colon. Loving and supporting Black LGBTQ plus folks.
Folks
Period.
with an X, period.
Period.
You know, I think that before we even get started in introducing our co-host, I am super proud of us because this is a conversation that we started last year with future Dr. David Johns when we did the live event with him, and he definitely encouraged us to continue the conversation, so I'm glad that it's happening. But we have some amazing, dope folks here today. Like, I'm beyond honored. I'm fangirling. I'm excited. So can you tell us about our first co-host? Can you go?
I am so excited because, first of all, this season is just blowing my mind with people. When we ask folks, and we're not asking no regular degulars.
Not no regular degulars.
No. And if you're a regular degular, get your game up. We asking like top-notch folks. Like just folks who are doing great work. And what's so impressive is when we ask, they're saying yes.
Oh, no. You got to listen. Those are prayers answered.
Ask and thou shalt receive.
Knocking the door with what?
Open. Okay, so we gonna let them in.
They looking at us like, what have we got ourselves into?
Why did we come inside the... Okay, so let's
good.
act civilized, at least for the intro.
Okay,
and
go.
then we'll, all right, so... Okay, so we have Dr. Shamari Reid.
Girl, put some respect on it. What is it?
Dr.
Okay.
Shamari Reid.
Okay, tell us.
PhD.
Go ahead.
Okay.
All
right. And so Dr. Shamari Reid is an assistant professor of clinical studies and education at the University of Oklahoma. Okay. He D1, babe. Okay. All right. Dr. Reid's work explores questions of how Black trans and queer youth in their communities sustain themselves amidst oppression, as well as how we can collaborate with these communities to better transform schools into sites of equitable opportunities for youth. His dissertation, which explores the agency of Black LGBTQ plus youth in New York City's ballroom culture,
I'm so excited.
was recently awarded the 2022 Dissertation of the Year Award. I told you we ain't working with no regular degulars.
Okay, you ain't seen my snap,
the Queer Studies SIG of AERA. Okay, in addition to working with the LGBTQ plus communities of color to reimagine schools, Dr. Reid's work engages the possibilities for reducing inequality in the lives of young people that result from centering radical love and social justice teaching and learning. And for all of you who are listening and interested, and you should be interested because, again, Black lives don't matter if we all don't matter. Okay, you all need to go and check out Dr. Reid's work on ShamariReid.com. ShamariReid.com.
Okay, then.
You see how I spelled it for the people? Because my grandma would text later and be like, how you spell that,
Shamari? You know
I want to avoid the trouble.
Okay, listen. I have the distinct, honey.
Not distinct.
Distinct.
Come on.
A pleasure to interview Shea Wesley Martin, or introduce. Let me start with that. Shea Wesley Martin is a lit teacher, scholar, and community curator raised at the intersection of gospel and go-go. Come on!
We got ballroom, we got gospel, we got a club.
All right, let me finish. Okay. Their scholarship and praxis explores the liberatory possibilities within queerness, transness, blackness, and education in the past, present, and beyond. In their work, Shea partners with teachers, community leaders, and most importantly, young people to reimagine what reading and teaching literacy looks like. Look, feel, and sound like. A seasoned educator. An audacious dreamer.
Audacious.
I love these awards. Okay. Shea is a co-founder of Love and Literacy and spearheads the Unicorn Express, 2 community initiatives focused on providing books, support, and affirming literacy experiences in LGBTQ plus youth. Can we give a hand clap for our co-host today, please?
I feel like, wow. Oh my goodness. First of all, I'm excited.
Well, can you bring them out? Can y'all
bring them out? Bring them out.
Can y'all say what's up to everybody, please?
Yo, you know what? It's the intros for me. I really want to be like, run that back. You know what I mean? You know, rappers be on a song, the intros start, and they be like, hey, go DJ, run that back. I'm gonna be like, run them intros back.
Yeah, okay. Y'all just like hyping us up. I'm like ready. Like I'm just, like family reunion style. I'm just ready.
A family reunion. You are family.
You are family. It's so interesting because I'm excited to be back with Shamari. I met Shamari at NCTE one time. Well, let me get it right now. Dr. Reid.
I'm about to say, put some respect on the name.
Met him at NCTE with Yoli and just a gift. Like, he has that same presence and that same love like Yoli. So I'm excited to have.
I can see that. I feel that.
But I also be watching and fangirl and Shea too. So I'm excited to have them here too. Like a boss. Okay. So if y'all listen to the Black Gays podcast, we always start with honoring our OGs.
Yes.
So the people who have paved the way for us, we recognize that none of us get to where we are by ourselves. So we want to start with you all telling us about someone who really helped you understand the LGBTQ plus community, specifically the Black LGBTQ plus community. Who kind of cultivated you and curated you in that space? I'm going to start with Shea.
Yeah, so I think when I think about like who is that person who really guided me to where I am today, like I feel like it's my mom, right? Like my mom was not someone who identified as like queer in the community, but just this idea of like centering queer voices in the Black experience. My mom, I still have her like Baldwin copies from like 1970, right? Wow. With her name like written inside in the front cover. In her handwriting, and like the pages are just crazy. Like tattered, right? Because she held them so dearly and really looked to him as someone who should be leading and just like guiding our work. She was also someone who was like the most brilliant person I know and directed a homeless shelter. And I remember growing up and being like, wow, yo, like why? Like you are so brilliant. You could do anything, right? And yet here you are like directing the shelter. And she was always like, my goal, right? If I'm doing my job right, like I will put this shelter out of business. Wow. Right? Because my goal is not to like always be here. It's to be able to liberate our community so that we don't need to exist, right? Like everyone has what they need. And when I think about like queerness and Blackness and like liberation, like that's what I look to, right? Centering the voices of Black, queer, and trans people in your work, right? And also being so steeped in community that you realize that that is what it's all about. And so my mom is definitely the OG that kind of just inspires and guides my work.
Shout out to your mom.
And you know what's so fascinating to me though? One, I want to say, Shea, thank you for evoking your mom's presence into this space. Let's just start with that. Yeah. But what is not lost on me is how many Black people we've interviewed and all of them talk about their mamas.
Why was I like emerging theme?
Yeah.
Mothers,
yes. So I'm thankful. Shout out to Black mamas. Okay?
Shout out to Black mamas.
All right, Dr. Reid, who's your OG? Who brought you and curated you into this space?
Yeah, and before I share, like, Mama, I love you too. I love my mom.
shout out to Dr. Reid's mama too.
Mama is so dope. And if she ever hears this, I just want her to know how deeply I love that woman and how everything I learned about Blackness and confidence, I really did get from her.
Oh, wow.
The OG I want to lift up. And this was hard for me because I feel so loved. I am so grateful that when I look back on my life, it's been love. People have loved up on me like the whole time.
That's good.
So trying to pick one person, right, was really hard because I have a community, but I want to lift up Dr. Carmen Kennard.
Yes.
Because not only is Carmen dope, but it was when I took Carmen's class on intersectionality and activist research where I found myself, I think, right? And I began healing and decided, I want to talk about me. And I want to talk about us. And I want to talk with us. Because before that class, I was not thinking about being all the way open in my research around queerness and transness. I didn't want to be that queer scholar. I didn't want to be that one on this stuff. And then I got to Carmen's class, and she just, in her way, you know, Carmen is dope, and she had her little red braids in and her little and her boots. And she just asked, like, why not? And it was that question. I was like, I don't know. And so I had to heal. I had to heal. And in healing, I refound my purpose. I found my community. I found ballroom. I found my people. And I said, this is what I want to do. And so I want to just lift her up as always sort of being someone in the academy. If you ever read her writing, like Carmen, she writes like us. She writes for us. Right? Code switching. She's literally telling it like it is, as if you were, you know, we was like at the table talking. And I love that. And I always say she liberated me along with Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, but really invited me to say, you can write how you want to write. And those who want it will get it, and those who don't won't. And so Carmen is everything to me. So I want to sort of lift her up.
Wow.
Give her some love. She's not on social media or anything like that.
Listen, friend, I'm so excited. Like, I got chills under this blazer to be in conversation with them. I'm so excited. So let's just get started. Can you go first with the first question?
But I wish y'all could see how Dr. P is stomping her feet like she having a tantrum. She is really excited. Girl, don't shake the table like K. Michelle said. Come on.
You be in church and you like,
Come on, listen.
Can you just go and quit trying to embarrass me? Go.
I am, but I can't read the question because you shaking the table. But anyway, let me start off with this, y'all. And I am going to actually, because we started with Shay, let's go back to Shay. In what ways is anti-Blackness present in the LGBTQ plus movement? And there's a second part to that.
Y'all know we extra with these questions.
Because you know we need folks to know so they can get right. What distinguishes the experiences of non-melanated LGBTQ plus folks and Black folks?
Yeah, I mean, so let me just start off by saying white LGBTQ folks be wilding out.
Tell it like it is. Tell it.
A lot of time, and I feel like, you asked about anti-Blackness, right? And I always think about this idea, right, that people are so fixated, right, in this society with whiteness, right? With how can I get as close to the center as possible in the current state of our society, right? So when I have been in spaces that are LGBTQ plus and not those affinity spaces, right, that are just for queer and trans people of color, right, I often come into contact with people who are very interested in how to be accepted and loved by the folks in power, right? The heterosexual, cisgender, white folks, right? How do I get the most power, right? How can I also achieve power? And because of that obsession with power and white supremacy, right, it perpetuates this idea of anti-Blackness in the space, right? And so, it affects whose voices are centered, right? It affects, right, the ideas that we are fighting for. And when I say we, I mean the larger community, because oftentimes I'd be like, y'all are over there and I'm doing my own thing because we're not aligned, right? We're not aligned. And so when they're thinking about, okay, what is most important for us, right? Sometimes it is like this alignment to this very whitewashed, patriotic, neoliberal agenda of, we just want to be like them. Right? We just want to be like them. And oftentimes it feels like my Blackness, right? My my magic, my defiance is a little too other, right? It's a little too much for their white queer agenda, right? Or white LGBTQ agenda. And so that, I think oftentimes that's what I see, right? It is something that I see, whether it be conferences, whether it be on, dating apps or in the community, right? Who is centered and who is not is so often rooted, right, in this idea of how can we show that we are acceptable, right? How can we show like what is an acceptable version of queerness, of transness that is most aligned or that will be most palatable to outsiders, right? To whiteness, to white supremacy. And so for me, that's where I see it a lot. And yeah, I'll turn it over to Shamari because I feel like Shamari got some thoughts too.
Come on, Shamari.
But, yeah.
Wow, Shay. Wow. Before we go to Shamari, I could not help but think about Dr. Patina Love. She said something that always sticks with me. She says, if you ever pay attention to whiteness, it don't matter what space you're in, it will always center itself.
Yeah.
It will always center itself. So I always think about that. So that was just in alignment with that. So I wanted to evoke her words there. Shamari, do you want to add something before I add the next question?
Yeah, but can we run the questions back?
Yes. Okay. So in what ways is anti-Blackness present in the LGBTQ plus movement? What distinguishes the experiences of non-melanated LGBTQ folks and Black folks?
I love it. I'm gonna do the little second part of the question first.
Okay.
What distinguishes us? Swag, culture.
Come on, Black folks got so much swag.
Ain't nobody doing it like us. And so when you look at Ballroom, for example, and you look at us, and then you look at the little stuff they doing,
the little stuff they doing, Dr. Reid.
It's not the same. Like, we are so brilliant and so beautiful, so imaginative.
Yes,
like, we literally are out here creating worlds. Like, Black, queer, and trans folks, I'm telling y'all, are the keys to the future. And so when I think about what distinguishes us, my mind always goes first to just the ways in which we can create magic in confining spaces, even the ways in which we can sort of grow beauty in a space where there seems to be no light, but we doing that. And so I think our power is what distinguishes us. When thinking about, how anti-Blackness is present in the LGBTQ movement, I couldn't tell you what it feels like because I don't really run with them because I've always known that they're not my people. You know what I mean? Like, because I grew up with my mama and my sisters and my aunts who were all so confident being Black women, I always sort of loved us and I love being with us. And so whenever I am invited to sort of white, queer, and trans spaces, I'm skeptical because I don't see the swag I'm used to.
Always.
I don't see the beauty I'm used to. But also, as Shay mentioned, I don't need to really talk about because they said it brilliantly, is that whiteness will center itself, right? But also, in many ways, a lot of them, and I ain't gonna say all because I don't want to generalize, but want to exist queerly in the current system. That's what they
That's good.
want to exist queerly in the current system. Well, I understand as a Black queer person, this current system can't exist if I'm supposed to exist freely. There is no way for me to exist.
This is good teaching.
In the current system. This shit has to be blown up.
Listen.
That is, I think, a big, big difference between when I'm interacting with white, queer, and trans folks, Black, cisgender, heterosexual folks, right? It's just like, I don't want to exist in this system. I understand that I can't. It's impossible. It has to go.
And I also want to add, Shamari, to your point about existing queerly in the system, right? Please don't let anyone call out a white queer person on their racism or colorism. Like, they will get in their feelings, right? They like, what do you mean that I can be someone who is not being oppressed in this moment, right? And so I often feel like there is a, I feel like Shamari has figured it out in a way that he would like y'all invite me to the space, I'm not coming. I have not quite figured it out yet, and so sometimes I do show up, right? And like, it's like it's so often engagement in the oppression Olympics, right? Like, this is a white LGBTQ space, but I'm like, well, like, how come y'all ain't got no Black folks in your panels, right? How come you talking about transness but not Black trans women? And then it's like, oh wait, like, what do you say? Like, I'm not racist. I got my Black Lives Matter sticker. Like, what do you?
I got my
about?
shirt on.
Those,
I got a Black friend.
Right. And so I think there is some real deep truth to white folks just wanting to be queer in a current system, because that queerness affords them oftentimes an out, right? Or an otherness that they deem to be sometimes unique in a way that's not necessarily threatening. Whereas Black, queer, and trans folks, like Shamari said, we cannot exist in this current system safely in a way that liberates us.
My goodness.
Ooh. So listen, let's have a family conversation. We started talking about the non-melanated folks, but it's also important for us to have a conversation with our community, with the Black community. So I'm gonna start with you, Shamari. Let's have a family conversation about homophobia in the Black community and the Black church. Where do you think the root of it stems from, and how do we address it head on? And I'm gonna just be honest with you, because I love that Shay brought up gospel and go-go. I grew up in the Church of God in Christ, which can be a very, very homophobic space. And it wasn't until I went to Spelman College where I was starting to push back on that homophobia that I grew up with. So I'm really excited to get into this question. I'll start with you, Shamari.
Family. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation.
Family reunion.
I think these are the conversations for me that have always been the most important. I've always wanted to engage with us in conversations about us and what becomes possible when we decenter whiteness. And so to say, within our Black community, what are some things we have to let go of, right? And so I'm thinking of Toni Morrison, who said, if you want to fly,
you've got to give up the shit that weighs you down. Excuse my language.
So what I say often is, if we are serious about our liberation, we've got to give up the things that weigh us down, the homophobia, the transphobia, the sexism, etc. And so when thinking about where it comes from and maybe how it sort of plays out in Black places in the Black church, for me, I'm never surprised because I see Black people as human. And what I mean by that is, as humans in a society, even though we Black, we are susceptible to the same pollen of oppression that blows around. We can ingest it too, okay? And so we are socialized in this society to believe certain things about ourselves and other people, and just because we're Black doesn't mean that we are going to sort of automatically reject those ideas. We learn them and we internalize them. And so I think when we think about Black people as humans in a society like this, it should not come as a surprise that we have homophobia and transphobia in our community, because we have that in this world. Right? It's not a Black thing. And I think often, especially if you grew up in Black spaces like me, you might be led to believe, wow, Black people are more homophobic and more transphobic. No, that's just who I'm rolling with. And so it hurts me because I'm rolling with them. But when I zoom out and I look at these laws that are happening, it ain't Black legislators behind that.
That's good. That's true.
Homophobic and transphobic too. But my everyday is with Black people, so I might think then that they are more discriminatory than other folks. No, Black people are just human. And if you grew up in this society, in this country, you learned a lot about gender and a lot about sexuality. And unless we talk about it, we're not going to unlearn it. So it will play out in churches. It will play out in the cookout, right?
Come on, cookout.
And I think we've got to get beyond this idea that just because I understand what it means to be racially oppressed, that I somehow can't oppress anybody else, or I can't internalize harmful views. That's not true. We know that single identity approach don't work. Black women for a very long time have told us that does not work. And that just focusing on racial oppression does nothing for them, because they are still women who are facing sexism at the hands of other Black people, other Black men. And so we've got to talk about the things that weigh us down so we can trade them for freedom. And so I think this conversation is very important. And for the folks listening, I just want you to sort of ask yourself where these ideas live within you, because they do. And I think I'm getting tired of, on Twitter, a lot of Black people saying, oh, I don't need to write no diversity statement. I don't need to do no training or no unlearning. And I'm like, all right, maybe, you know what I mean? You haven't internalized racism, cool. But all the other shit that's weighing you down, what about that?
Yes.
When we keep hiding behind, oh, but I experienced racial oppression, cool. You still oppress other people. And even within racial oppression, we got colorism and all fat phobia and all other kind of beauty standards that come from whiteness, right?
You are preaching.
They've taught us that we can rank each other. That's what whiteness does, really. And we do it. And so we've got to let it go if if we care about all Black people. So I'll stop there and sort of see what Shay got, because I see they shaking their head. So I'm gonna let Shay jump in.
Listen, I feel like I'm at the church house. We need to get a basket. Where's the offering basket?
Honey. Listen. Ooh.
Wait, did somebody say offering?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Shay.
Look, I'm about to get ready to get up and leave because y'all mentioned offering. I gotta go. No, but like,
wait. Shay, like, I gotta get up out of here. What?
I can't be giving my brunch money in the offering plate. But so when Shamari was talking, all I could think about was, first, like, how much I just love Black folks, right? Like how much, like, in everything I do, right? I'm thinking about, okay, like how can I love Black folks and show my love of Black folks, of myself, like of my people, like through my work, through my ideas, right? Through how I move through this world, right? And, I think like Shamari, I also think about the humanity of Black folks, right? And, I think this, as Shamari was talking about, this lie that we have been sold about the Black community being more homophobic or being more transphobic, right, than other spaces, right? And I also think about, the ideologies that we learned, right, as Black folks, and where do we learn those ideas from, right? How were they ingrained in us, and why? What is the rationale behind why we perpetuate them, right? And for me, it always comes back to whether I'm looking at like white queer folks or Black folks who are not part of the LGBTQ community, right? It's about, this idea of wanting to be accepted and loved by a society that will never love us, right? The way we need to be, right? Good. And so when I'm thinking about, especially like I grew up in, in the Black church as well. And I think that the rhetoric that I heard, right, I'm always wondering, like, what are we afraid of? Right?
That's a good question right there.
As families, as people in that space, like, what are we afraid of losing, right, if we embrace, right, our ideas about sexuality, about gender, right? And oftentimes when I think about it, right, it's this idea of respectability in society, right? As Black folks, is trying to debunk these myths that have been created, right, all the way back to, when we were enslaved, right, about this, like, the Black body as being like hypersexual, right? And so, this idea that, like, queer and trans folks are messing up the family, right? And then we have all these, like, these messages about like single parenthood and like solidifying the family and not being deviant, all these different things. And I'm thinking about, like, what are we afraid of, right? What are we afraid to do, to say? Who are we afraid to love, right? And I think so much about what's happening in the Black churches is that we have been taught that who we are as people is unacceptable, right? As people, as Black people, right? And so I think oftentimes when I'm hearing people talk about it, I'm like, okay, like, the comments that I'm hearing, right, to me seem to signify a fear of loving pieces of us or of our people, because we are afraid that if we love those pieces of us, then maybe society won't love us back. And for me, as a Black, queer, non-binary person, it took me a while to release myself from the desire to be loved by this society, right? And I feel like once we do that as Black folks, there is nothing that we will not be able to do, right? Like, we want to figure out, like, how to get free. That is it. Like Shamari said, like, releasing, right? What are we willing to release to get free? And I often feel like we got to release some of that fear, right? That is what undergirds that rhetoric in the Black church, those jokes, those norms that we have about men and women and the family and husband and wives. Once we release that and really learn to love all the pieces of ourselves, especially the ones that we don't want to talk about, that's when we'll actually get free.
Whoa. When I tell you,
I'm quiet because I'm being preached to.
It also is well with my soul on today.
And it's not just, the topic of itself. Like, what are you willing to give up to get free?
But even as I hear Shay and Dr. Reid talking, I'm imagining, like, I'm really doing like you would say, a chin check on myself. Like, how have I played into these systems? Like, what is it that I need to do? Like, I'm really, and I hope that our listeners are doing the same thing. Absolutely. I hope that they're really taking this on and saying, okay, how can I show up better? What do I need to release? Like, what's keeping me? And I think one of you posed that question, what's keeping me from loving?
That's the good part. Because if you really understand the church and the gospel, that's what it's about.
Love.
That's what it's about. So, friend, I'm gonna let you take us to the next question because I'm getting a little teary-eyed, so I'm gonna let you go.
Before you go, let me just say something. Let me give you an example, because I feel like a lot of times, like, folks who are advocating for something, like, are kind of position ourselves as being above, right, and beyond what we are thinking, right. And I will say that maybe 5 years ago, right, I was queer, but I was very transphobic, right. I was like, you know, I'm queer, but I'm not like them, right. I love women, right, but like I'm not like those type of people.
That's good.
Who are different than me, right. And I had to really grapple for a while and be like, what? But why though? Like, why don't I want to be different, right? Why don't I want to say that I'm aligned with those, like, certain people? And it was because, right, I was afraid of how I would be positioned in society or in my community by aligning with, like, trans or saying that I'm non-binary, right? Because there's a difference between saying, like, oh, that's your little friend over there, right? Because that's how we do, you know.
That's how we do.
In the community, like in the cookout, right? Like, oh, here comes Shay and a little friend, right? Their roommate or whatever. It's different than saying, actually, like, my pronouns are different, right? Actually, like, it's not about who I'm sleeping with, right? It's about how I identify as a person and the fact that I refuse to acknowledge, like, this binary, right? And so it took me a while to get there. And so I'm not saying that giving up what we are afraid of, right, is going to be easy, but I do think that it's possible.
Ooh. But you know what? This goes so well with the title, though. For Black Lives Matter, like, we all have to matter within this space. We can't. And I'm not saying, I'm talking about me, departmental, like, well, I like black people. I don't like them kind of black people. I like black people, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it has to be.
Them ain't my folks.
Them ain't my folks. And I think we all do that. And so what I appreciate most is you all's transparency and vulnerability having this conversation, because what you're saying is it took you a process to get to this space that you're in. Everybody's not showing up right now free. And Keisha checks me all the time because I'm like, why these people acting like they can't be free?
And I'm like, listen, we're all on a journey. And remember the moments in your life when you weren't free and people couldn't deal with you in that way. And so it's a constant chin check. I mean, we were actually talking about this on the ride here.
We were.
Was just about our elders and how they show up in some spaces. But I'm like, but they sacrifice for us to be free right now. So they might not show up the way that we're showing up in this space, but know that it cost them something for us to even be here. So, friend, I'm gonna let you go to the next question because this is good.
This is honestly good, and we've been talking about this at a more so adult and personal level. But right now, when we are thinking about legislation, and I think Dr. Reid had brought up legislation or something a little bit earlier, just tapped on it. One of the things that we see right now happening, especially in the state of Florida, I want to highlight Florida. I love me. Y'all know I love me some Charlamagne the God, and hopefully we get on this Breakfast Club real soon.
I don't know what her obsession with the Breakfast Club is.
He always say that there be the craziest people be up in Florida. And so one of the things that we see is this bill, the Don't Say Gay bill, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what it's called.
And also reporting people.
And reporting people. And we're in this bill, we're saying that we're not even having conversations about gender or sexual orientation in K through third grade spaces, right? And so it's really leaving a lot of students out. Trans students can't participate in youth sports or things of that nature. And so I want to ask you all, how does this legislation or any of the, and there's other states who have adopted this.
Tennessee.
I just saw something about Iowa
Tennessee.
actually saying that they're not letting trans kids participate. How does this negatively impact LGBTQ plus youth? And how can teachers, teacher educators as well, support our youth, not just in Florida, but everywhere? Because if this is spreading just in a couple of states, I think right now it's like 7 states that have this legislation, it's going to be knocking on our door soon. So talk to us about that, please. Oh, let me assign somebody. I forgot. I'm like, why ain't nobody talking? Dr. Reid, go ahead and hit us up with some intel.
Yeah, it's a lot, y'all. And I'm in Oklahoma right now, right? And
Oh,
so
wow.
some things happen in our legislation. We're right next to Texas. And so all of that rhetoric and discourse is coming up, right? You have this governor in Texas who is trying to, he has this directive that if you're engaging in gender affirming care, you are engaging in child abuse, and he's trying to get families investigated. I also want to just say here, there is no legal standing. That is not legal right now. Actually, on March 11th, the courts are going to decide what to do with this directive. So if there's anybody out there saying, I can't do this because it's legal or illegal, it's not. It is literally just a directive that you can't ignore. And the state of Texas is actually looking into. And there was a case that was actually sort of rejected, and where the court said, no, you are not going to look into this family. So let me just start there. As far as how it's affecting young people, I have a non-answer, or I have a different answer. The first answer is you can go Google that. So what I can tell you right now, it sucks. It hurts, right? It leads to feelings of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
But I would flip the question, right? And really to invoke Toni Morrison here, and I want to take y'all back to an interview she had with Charlie Rose.
Yeah, come on.
They were talking about racism, and he says, Toni, do you still have this encounter? How does it feel? And she says, that's the wrong question. The question is, how do you feel? So I want to ask people who do not identify as Black, queer, and trans folks, how do you feel? To know that our baby's under attack and you ain't doing nothing. How does that feel? To be able to say that you love Black people or that Black lives matter, but yet you are silent. And in many ways, you are collaborating with folks who are trying to kill us. How do you feel? Because I think we can tell you, we've told you for a very long time that it hurts, that we, in many ways, there's suicide ideation and depression.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to work. And so I want to sort of flip the question and ask the listeners who don't identify as us and who are like, I want to be neutral, or this isn't really my fight. How does it feel to say that Black lives matter? And now you have Black youth, you have our babies out here under attack by law, by the state.
Yeah.
You ain't doing nothing. How do you sleep with yourself at night, knowing that you contribute to that?
That's heavy, but that's so honest.
That's
honest. That's so needed.
And it's interesting because I have, and I got this from Dr. B, every class that I'm teaching, I've been bringing up these things, every class.
Yes.
What's your role? What are you going to do about it? Who are you going to tell about this? And it has been fascinating to watch my students say, well, I didn't even know nothing about that.
Yes.
It's like you can pick and choose what you decide to fight for if it only benefits you. And I tell them every single class period, I'm going to keep telling y'all, because we all have a responsibility to do something about it. We all have a responsibility, even if it starts with having conversations with people in your family who are homophobic, who supports it. You can start somewhere. You might not be able to, create legislation, but you can start somewhere, and we all have a role in that. And I think even just starting with the conversation, because I told you when we were coming here, I speak to my grandmother every week, and I love my grandmother. She reared me, but I am always pushing back on her, thinking like, no, grandmother, that does not work. That hurts people when you say that. And that's a lot for me to say that to my grandma, because in the Black community, you don't talk back to your elders. You just don't. But I know that it has gotten to a place, and I have nieces and nephews who are struggling. And I'm like, no, grandmother, you can't say that anymore. That's rude. Let me give you something else to say. And she might be mad at me for like 5 more minutes, but when I send her something through Amazon, she gonna call me back. So we're gonna keep doing that work. We're gonna keep doing that work. So I'll let you weigh in, Shay.
Oh, and before Shay drops the mic, I'm so sorry. That second part of the question, let me just say this to the teachers. As a teacher myself, working with teachers, I have 2 things I want to share. 1, all of us have a gender and sexual identity, okay? And so every lesson that involves humans is about gender identity and sexual identity. Every book you reading where there's any kind of family structure, guess what you're teaching? About gender identity and about sexual identity.
Wow.
There's this thing that happens when we introduce queerness and transness. We want to reduce it down to sexual intercourse and like, oh, we can't do that. Why would you do that? Why would you? We're not asking you to do that. But you are teaching every single day about gender and sexual identity, because guess what? All of us have been gendered and all of us have been sexualized. So that's the first thing I'll tell teachers is you are already doing it. Surprise. The second thing I will say is research is helpful. The reason that so many folks are out here doing this research is so that teachers can use it as a weapon, y'all, to say, look, This is evidence-based. This is grounded in research. Research shows that when I am more inclusive, I have these kinds of results in my young people. These are the same kind of results that as a school we say we want, and I'm just getting us there. And so use research so you can move beyond your opinion, you can move beyond ignorance, you move beyond fear, and you can draw on this scholarship that so many Black, queer, and trans scholars have been doing for a very long time. Use it. They out there sacrificing themselves in their careers and their lives to give us this work so that we can go back to it and say, research shows, because that's how whiteness works. They always want something to be grounded in empirical data. And so use the data, teachers. Use it to fight for yourself. When you go up against your principals, when you go up against other families and parts of the community, say that everything I'm doing is evidence-based, and nothing that I am doing is contributing to the harm and the violence of our young people. And so if you can show me some research that shows that young queer and trans folks have told you that learning about themselves led them to suicide ideation, use it, but I can guarantee it doesn't exist because the reverse is actually true. And so teachers understand that every single day that you teach about humans, any human in any part of this world, you are teaching about gender and sexuality because we all have one. And you can use the research to sort of support your arguments and support the teaching practices when folks try to come at you crazy.
Wow.
I love that.
Listen,
like pretty much what you saying is you have what you need. You are the source.
Yes.
You your plug.
Shay, what you got for us? Wow.
This is good stuff.
Yeah, I want to echo, right, Shamari being like, just Google, right? Also research, you got what you need. You just need the courage. You need you need the will, the want to do something. Right? Because I can't imagine waking up and being like, well, like what cause am I going to choose today to think about? You know, like what a privilege, right? And I think that like
what a privilege,
especially when I work with teachers and new teachers, veterans, you know, a lot of what I hear is excuses, right? Is, well, if I was in the right school, if I had the right administration, if we could teach the right texts, right? But it's hard for me to talk about this stuff if I'm teaching Shakespeare, or I teach math. I don't deal with gender and sexuality. Like, I'm just like, those are excuses, right? There's this weird notion that in order to do justice-centered work and care-centered work, you have to be in the perfect environment at the right time. And that is not the case, right? Every school that I've ever worked in or taught in, right, I've come up against barriers and obstacles, but the difference is that I don't care, right? Like, you know, like I know what the stakes are, and the stakes are high, right? The stakes are so high, especially for Black, queer, and trans youth, right? And so, you know, I actually started my teaching career in Jacksonville, Florida, right? In a state that had no employment protections for LGBTQ folks, right? In a classroom in a city that did not protect me, right? If I were to be fired for being queer, right? And I came out and I was an out teacher, right? Not saying that educators have to come out, because I don't think it's the responsibility of queer and trans folks, right, to be out for students, for queer and trans students, right? I think it's more the allies who need to show up, right, and do that work because they have less to lose, right? But there have been so many spaces that I've been in where I've just been like, I have a lot to lose, right? I could lose it all, but I know that there is so much more to gain if I put my neck out there, right? And so I think what teachers and educators or teacher educators need to do is finally admit that, right, what's preventing them is a laundry list of excuses, right? Of reasons they have concocted in their minds as to why queer and trans lives, or Black, queer, and trans folks are not as important as being in the good graces of their principal, right? As having parents love you, right? Because what's going to happen when you start to speak out is you're going to start to get them side eyes, right? At the faculty meetings, right? Or you might start to get phone calls, right, from parents or complaints, right? But for every phone call you get, right, there is a queer and trans kid in your classroom who is silently saying thank you, right? Who is going to look back 20 years from now, right, and say like, you know, I didn't know what was going on at the time maybe, but like this teacher, I was safe in this classroom, right? In a state that is telling me, right, that who I am is not right, right? The who I am is unacceptable and it is unlawful at this point, right? We have some states who are saying like it is unlawful to be who you are, right?
Yeah.
I have a teacher who saw me, right, in that space and said like, this space is sacred, this space is safe, right? And that's our job as teachers, right? Like our job is not to continue the status quo, right? Nope. Our job is to help students critically engage with themselves and the content, right, and the world around them. And so if we're doing our job, then we should be supporting queer and trans youth. And as far as like how kids are being affected, right, I think for me, like I see it on a day-to-day basis, right? I run an online book club for queer and trans youth around the country, right? I have kids who are in Florida and Texas, right? I have kids who are in states where they are not out at school, they can't be out, they're not out with their, you know, and their families. I also just spearheaded the Unicorn Express, which I literally started because there were libraries and schools who were pulling books off of the shelves, right? And packing them away, sending them to warehouses, right? District warehouses to just sit, right? Like they're not, you know, then I saw that they were like, they were having bonfires with books, right? Like, oh, let's like put the books that we don't like in the bonfire, right? So I have requests coming in from kids all around the country that basically say like, help, they took all of the books off the shelves.
Wow.
Like, I just need a book, right? Can you like think about that, right? Sit with that. That so many people in this world, in this country especially, can go into a school library and find themselves in a book, right? But we have queer and trans youth, especially Black queer and trans youth, that the books are so few and far in between, and they're taking them out of the libraries, right? And so all kids want, right, is to be affirmed, to be seen through literature, through media, through whatever, right? And they're not doing that. And Shamari said, like, the results, we know the results, right? We know about the depression, about the truancy, we know about the dropout, we know about like suicide idea. We already have the data, right? I'm actually tired of looking at the stories about how many queer and trans youth kill themselves. Like we have countless stories of that. And so like Shamar said, I wonder, like talking to teachers who are listening to this, like, how does that make you feel, right? What are you going to do tomorrow, in the next minute, right? How are you going to pause this podcast and then come back later? Because you have to figure out what you want to do or what you are going to do before you push play again.
That's good.
And so for me, it's sitting with that and actually doing some action and not just thinking about it.
Listen, wow. Our last question, I feel like is redundant, but I'll just give you the opportunity to give your last words, you know, right before the benediction of this interview. Is there any wisdom, and I'll start with you, Shea, and then we'll rock with Shamari, that you want to give to everyone to ensure that all Black lives matter? And if you feel like you've said it all, you can say, I'll pass the mic. But just in case you missed something, I want to give you a chance to share that. I'll start with you, Shea.
Yeah, I think for me, the two things that I always think about is not being afraid to sit with yourself, right? To sit with yourself and reflect and be honest with yourself, right? Because there are so many experiences that we have lived through, right? So many experiences and ideas that we have inherited, that we have been taught, right? So many complexities that kind of are within our experiences of being Black, right? And trying to figure out how to love ourselves, right? And love our people. And it is okay to sit with that experience and grapple with it, right? And figure out how to reckon with it. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, like, this is where I am, right? This is where I want to go. And I'm going to figure out how to get there, right? In a place that is filled with love, because I want to see us get free. And my last thing is just like, don't be afraid to shine, right? And I think, you know,
I see you shining light on them.
Something that I love about Black queer folks, right, is that we shine so brightly, right? Yes. There is so much stuff in this world, like, that wants to kill us, right? That wants to diminish our light, right? and we shine defiantly, right? And so I think,
Shine
don't be
defiantly.
afraid to shine, but also like don't be afraid to like gas your friends up when they shine.
Come on,
right?
because I
Like,
lights it go, Mimi.
Like if you see someone shining, right, don't be afraid to like send them a text, right? Like tweet it out, share it, whatever. Something that I appreciate about my mom is like whenever we used to get like any kind of accolade, right? She would send that family group text.
Come on.
That's so
like,
Nana.
proud parent moment.
Yes.
Like, let me tell you about my kids. It'd be like, I tie my shoes, right? My mom's like, let me tell you, right? Look at you tie your shoe. Look at that shoe. Look at that bow, right? Like, the best thing we can do, I think, in so many moments is like to love on each other, right?
Yes.
And to love in public and audaciously. So don't be afraid to shine and also gas up those who are shining around you.
Love it. Come on, Shamari, what you got? What's your parting words? Because we got our
final words. Final words. So I'll just say this in thinking about speaking to my people and to my community, to Black people. I will start by saying I love you deeply. The second thing I want to say to us is let go. Let go of whiteness, please, because whiteness has taught us that some Black lives matter more than others. And we are clinging on to that lie so tightly that we are paralyzing ourselves, and we are making it unable for us to understand each other, but also making us too heavy to fly. And so if we are serious, and I'll go back to Tony, if we're serious about our liberation and we're serious about justice and about flight, because we are natural flyers.
Yes, we are.
Let go of all the things that weigh us down, the things that have been taught to us by whiteness. Let go of the sexism, let go of the homophobia, let go of the transphobia, and all of the other forms of discrimination in which we do perpetuate in our own communities. Let it go, because it's holding us back and keeping us from being who we're supposed to be, and it's keeping us from the sky, which is our natural habitat. And to Black, queer, and trans folks, I would say, brilliant. You're amazing, and I will see you in the future.
I'm gonna move on, but I'm just like that touched my heart.
I'll cry later. I always be crying, but go ahead, friend. We have 2 segments because we got our engineer looking at us like y'all done took up the time, but he was late. So go ahead. I'm gonna let you
put that on the national podcast.
Go ahead, Wesley.
I love it. Listen, we have a segment called What You Doing With Your Life. And what that segment is about is what you reading know, what you listening to, what you watching. Like, drop us like one of each. Let us know. And Shay, I'm gonna start with you. Like, what you doing with your life?
What you doing with your life? Look, they cracking up.
I am watching Abbott Elementary.
Yeah, Bob!
Quinta Brunson is a genius.
Yes.
Like, what? Like that? Like, they on hiatus right now, and I'm upset about the fact that I don't have them for 3 weeks. But I'm watching that. I am rereading Baldwin's Giovanni's Room.
Gotta put that on my list.
I am listening to a lot of Yola. If y'all don't know Yola, Get Hip.
Okay. I need to get hip. Who is Yola?
Yola is a Black, like, I want to say country singer, but like just has a voice like you. Like, I feel like, I don't want to call her the Black Adele, right?
Okay.
But she has that like smoothness to her voice.
Okay.
Got it.
When I'm writing or when I'm reading, or I'm just trying to figure out like how can I escape the madness of this world, I put the headphones in and Yola kind of just like guides me through.
Love it.
That's what I'm up to these days.
I need Yola, girl. I have to check Yola.
Be calling on Yola.
Okay. Shamari, what you reading? What you watching? What you listening to right now?
Yeah, what am I doing with my life?
What you doing with your life?
I'm chilling, I'm resting, I'm drinking water. You know what I'm watching?
Come on,
I'm
get
drinking
some
water and minding your
moisturizing.
business.
Come on.
That's it. So I am hooked on Bel Air, y'all.
Oh
Listen,
my gosh, yes.
can we talk about Bel Air and this reimagining of this story that we love with these characters?
Yes.
But they go deep. They are using these characters that we know to talk about things that we are talking about right now. They're talking about queerness on Bel Air, by the way. They're talking about drugs. They're talking about sexism and respectability. Like, Bel Air for me is one of them shows I'm hooked.
Okay.
I rewatch. It's 7 episodes out right now. So if you are skeptical, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, we love the Fresh Prince."
I'm gonna try to watch it. I'm looking for a broke fire stick.
Let me say this: it's a reimagining. It's not the same story. It is using characters that we know to tell a very different story. So I'm watching Bel Air. I'm reading Undrowned, and I'm only reading 1 chapter a day from Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Undrowned. Alexis is a dope Black queer person, by the way. Undrowned is about Black feminist lessons from marine animals. It's beautiful. Alexis Pauline Gumbs, know the name.
Okay.
And so I'm reading that, and then I'm listening to this playlist that I found on Instagram. There's this Instagram group called They Have the Range, about like Black singers. I like vocals and stuff, y'all. So they like ask the public, like, what are some of the songs, Black songs, with the best background vocals?
It better have Brandy on there. It better
Brandy is on it.
Okay, now.
Why she was gonna fight the curator of the playlist?
You gotta get into this playlist.
They have range. Okay.
They Have the Range. It's a playlist of just amazing background. Janet is on it. Give Janet Jackson her things, please.
Okay.
In the background vocals game, please.
Okay.
Put some respect on my sister's name.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that now.
It's a dope playlist, so you can find it on Instagram. So that's what I've been listening to. We're just discovering background vocals all over.
Listen, so we have one last segment.
What is it?
We started off honoring our OGs, but there are people who are doing the work right now. So we love this segment. It's called I See You.
I See You.
So, Shamari, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us one person, and then we'll jump right to Shay, that you see doing great work around advocating for Black LGBTQ plus people? Who do you want to shout out right now?
Wow, that's huge, right? That's a huge.
Like just one, or you can pull a Dr. P and have like a list, but we would prefer.
It ain't even that. It's just like the young people, the names we don't know, the young people who are walking out, who are protesting, who are choosing themselves, who are loving themselves publicly and without shame. Y'all, that wasn't possible some decades ago, right?
Yeah.
It was dangerous to do so. But they're risking their lives. They're literally saying, this is me at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They're so brave. They're so courageous. They're so amazing. And so those names that I don't know, I want to lift them up. And so I see you, Black, queer, and trans young people in high schools turning it out. I see you.
Turn it out.
I love you.
Shay, who do you see?
Well, speaking of little kids, Key Gross, who runs Woke Kindergarten.
Yes,
so bomb.
So like just the one of the most magical, honest, like brilliant, creative humans like I have ever interacted with, right? And just the audacity, the defiance to be like, I don't actually need systems to do this work, right? Like I'm gonna do this work that's the most important outside of these systems, and it's going to be good, right? And it's going to be good, right? And so Key Gross is the GOAT.
Love it.
And so when I'm looking at people who are doing like good work, I'm always looking back like, how can I be better, right? Like where's my North Star? Key Gross is it.
Wow.
I love.
So, friend, we are like way over our time. So go ahead and give them our church bulletin so we can ride up out of here.
Listen, let me drop the church bulletin board information for y'all. The first thing that we need y'all to do is follow us on our IG, on our Facebook, and on our YouTube. All of those are Black Gays Podcast. Now, when it comes to Twitter, it is at Black Gays Pod. Make sure that you're liking our stuff. Make sure that you're rating our stuff. And on the YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe, okay? Do both. We need to have this algorithm right. Also, engage with us on social media. If you love us, let us know. If you don't love us, we pray for you. And then we hope that you get delivered from the hatred that's in your heart. Share our episodes with all your folks. Even your enemies can be blessed by this conversation, y'all. If we gonna have free Black folk, everybody got to be free and hear it. And last but not least, shout out to our clique.
Our
Come
clique.
on. ain't nobody fresher than our clique. Mimi and Brittany, what's up?
And we also got to shout out our studio engineer, Bravery Studios,
Marvin. Even though Keisha be out in here tweaking on you, but guess what? You're still great. And we shout out Bravery Studios. If you are in the New Jersey, New York area, hit them up because that is a what? Treat. Just don't mess with our time.
Okay. Listen, we only have one more request of you all. Because you co-host with us, you just got to let the folks know who you are when we ride out. So we will model for you just like great teachers, all right? And
so y'all go ahead and unmute.
All right,
so you'll be ready.
It's your girl, Dr. Porcher.
And it's your girl, Dr. Bertrand.
It's your boy, Dr. Reid.
It's Shea Wesley Martin.
And we out.
We are two women in academia,
raising questions and breaking down perceptions
from a Black point of view.
Welcome to the Black
Based Podcast. It's your girl, Dr. Porcher.
And it's your girl, Dr. Bertrand.